The more hits we play, the more hits we get. URLradio.net. Stacey Sturm, and I'm here for another Financial Friday with my financial gurus. We have President and CEO of Solid Rock Financial, John Dwyer.
Hey, Stacey, how are you?
Good, good. And also we have financial author and CPA, Brian Bloom.
Hi, Stacey.
Okay, now we are going to, in this segment, we are going to talk about rates of return. So for people that aren't familiar with financial terms, what is classified as rates of return?
So there's a belief system out there that average rate of return means something. And so what you have to understand is there's a difference between the average rate of return and the actual rate of return inside your portfolios and what you're earning on a compounding basis. And the reality is that it's very different, right? That math isn't money and money's not math. But typically what happens is that in the traditional planning world, they always talk about average rates of return, and then it's supposed to mean something. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that you need to start looking at your actual return, because the averages can be very misleading, and the reality is that's math, and the money part is the actual return.
I think most people don't want to have to do the math on it.
No, but
they would just rather kind of stare and look at you blindly and say, yep, that sounds good.
They don't want to do the math, and that's why they just look at their average portfolio or their average returns, and that's why they're like, oh, look at, I average 10%, but what does that? But what does that really mean?
And they have no idea.
They have no idea what that. It looks good because it's not negative, right? But
right?
So let's just do a little quick exercise.
Okay. Now, disclaimer: worst person in the world when it comes to math.
We'll make it simple.
Okay.
Okay. So, Stacey. Now, for the compliance and the viewers out there, I am not stating that I'm going to get you a 20% rate of return. This is an example only.
This is a hypothetical situation.
This is a hypothetical situation. Okay. So, if I were to get you an average rate of return of 20% over 2 years, would you invest your money?
Sure.
Average rate of return of 20%.
Okay.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Most people would say, sign me up. Okay.
Okay. Well, because I'm wondering, like, I automatically go through that, like, okay, did I go negative at first? Did we, like, what are we going through? What are we going through in the process of the 2 years?
I'm going to get you an average rate of return of those 20.
Okay.
But
then
Stacey,
that's
see,
good.
that's the key. You brought up something, how am I going to get there? Because
yeah, I want to know the journey.
Here's average rate of return of 20% per year for 2 years. They're thinking, year one, I'm getting 20%. Year two, I'm getting 20%. And at the end of that second year, if I invested $1,000, I should have $1,440.
Right.
Because I'm expecting 20% each year. Because that's the average.
But I just know in past it didn't always go up. It went down, and a lot of people got screwed.
So let's walk through that example. Okay. Because I'm going to average you your 20% return.
Okay.
So, are you led to believe with an average rate of return of 20%? Are you led to believe you're going to have more money or less money?
More money.
Okay. So the investment dollar amount is $100.
Okay.
Okay. So for the first year, you're going to give me $100, and we're going to knock it out of the park. We're going to have it like in the 1990s, where we're going to get 100% return on your dollar.
Okay.
On your $100.
Okay.
So that $100 at 100% return grew to what?
$200.
$200. Okay. So the following year, we have this $200, and we lose 60%. We have a down year. We have a negative 60%. Okay.
Okay.
So that $200 after a negative 60% loss is a $120 loss.
Okay.
Okay. So if you take 200 minus 120, that leaves you with
$80.
$80. Okay. But if we look at what your average return was over those 2 years, what is your average return? How do you figure out averages? You take the positive years, subtract out the negative years, and divide by the number of years. If I got you a 100% return and a negative 60% return over that 2 year period was an average rate of return of 20%.
Okay.
Did I fulfill my obligation in guaranteeing you that 20% average rate of return?
No, it doesn't seem right.
I did, in the fact that I got you the average. I got you the average rate of return. But what is your actual return? Do you have more than what you started out with or less? You have $80. You started out with 100. You have 80 now.
Well, then that's less.
That's less.
Yeah.
See, there's a big difference between your actual return and your average return.
The average was,
But the average was 20%.
Yeah.
And people are led to believe that the average matters.
Ah.
And it doesn't.
That's sneaky.
Okay. Because if you look at planning, it's all linear. We're going to
Which
average
is what happened
out.
a lot when we had our recession back in 2008. That's what happened to a lot of people.
Yeah, and their advisors could still show them, look, you're still averaging 8%.
Yeah. But they're like, yeah, but I have less money now. Way less money.
You can take any period of years
Yeah.
and calculate the average, calculate the actual, and the actual will always be less than the average.
Wow.
Any combination of
Always.
years that are out there, always.
That's crazy.
And you know, it's interesting. I mean, Brian and I were just reading an article from
a newspaper.
From a newspaper. And they talk about
And one of their financial gurus.
one of their financial gurus talks about just do the math and how average matters. And the reality is it's not math, because it matters what you actually have at the point of distribution, because
Right.
it's volatile. Right? You may have averaged 8%, but that doesn't mean that you're going to always have more.
Right.
And so the average really becomes irrelevant. And so when we work with our clients, we help them understand the difference between average return and actual return, and help them understand the only number that they should be focused on is what they're actually getting.
And it's interesting, too, because, John, when you doubled Stacy's money, you didn't reduce the $200 for the taxes that were due on the $100
Right.
worth of growth.
No.
So,
That's
in
true.
fact, at the end of year one, having doubled the money, you did not have $200. You even had something less than that, because you had to pay taxes, and you probably had to pay the advisor some fees to get you that.
Yeah.
Yep, that 20% was net of taxes, net of fees.
Yeah, net of taxes, net of fees, so,
It would have been a lot worse.
right.
That $80 would have been a lot worse.
That's crazy. So you just can't go by average rate of return. You guys go more in depth than that.
Yeah, the average is just what you're averaging.
Yeah.
And the reality is it doesn't matter.
Who wants to settle for average?
The actual. That's right. Well, but people are settling for
I
the
know.
average, because that's what they're bought into. That, listen, this is what I've been averaging over this time period that I've been in managing your money. This is your average return. Well, that's irrelevant. I mean, I averaged you a 20% guaranteed rate of return over those 2 years in this hypothetical situation, and you ended up with less money.
Yeah.
And it's worse when you look to the future, because someone will say to you, if I can average for you an 8% rate of return, here's what you're going to have.
Right.
And again, you take any number of years, group them together, and the actual will always be worse than the average. But yet, if you listen carefully, people are going to say, if I can average for you, it's not what it's going to be.
Right. So if I come in as one of your clients and you have my portfolio, how do you break it down for me then? Do you say, this is what I made you this year? This is what I did make you this year?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look. You
Yeah.
have to look at the contributions. I mean, that's one thing that people oftentimes forget too, is they'll look at their statements and they'll say, "Hey, I'm averaging X amount of dollars," but they forget to compound or calculate the contributions in the
Yeah.
account. That's going to minimize their average. So yes, when we look at our portfolios of our clients, we can peel the layers of the onion back and show them what the actual returns are, because to us, average doesn't matter.
Right.
The average return isn't what's important to us. What's important is the actual return and what you actually have when it comes to distribution, and what the exit strategies are as it relates to those accounts.
And so if people want to get a hold of you and talk to you about their financial situation, John, if they want to come into Solid Rock and talk with you about you handling their portfolio, what would you do?
We have a first meeting and understand where the client's coming from, and we share our philosophy and our belief systems, and we just kind of go from there. And then we'd ask for them to, obviously, we'd collect a bunch of financial data that would move us down that journey, and just, you know, that data allows us to have the conversations and the strategies that we just need to chart course for those clients.
So do you ever sit down with them and say, you know, they brag about how their current financial planner gets them like a 30% rate of return, but you look and you're like, yeah, but if you look at it, if you were to get disbursements now, you're losing money.
No,
I was going to say, most of the time when people come to us, they know they're not getting
Yeah,
the 30%.
as much as they should.
Because they're going, what's wrong?
Right.
You know, something's not working right.
How come this isn't growing like it's supposed to be?
How come I don't have as much money as I think I ought to have?
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of helping our clients understand the truth about wealth. And money's not wealth. Wealth is something that you obtain through strategy, through game board playing, not just buying a product. I've said it before. If you go from one advisor to the other and he just mixes up your mutual funds, you're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Your boat is going down. You just might be going down in first class instead of third class, and that's not what we do.
You don't want to go down with the ship at all.
We have to right the ship. We got to find the better strategy. We got to map a different course so we don't hit the iceberg. So that iceberg can be anything. It could be inflation. It could be taxes. It could be things we have never seen before. It might just be even technological change. We want things, current things we have work, but maybe we want, the next piece of technology. Well, that costs money too. And so there's all kinds of icebergs, and so we want to take our clients down a path in which we avoid the things that are going to erode and are going to take away.
I think that's an important point, too, what Brian's talking about, is that there's all these eroding factors on as we accumulate our assets, bringing inflation, planned obsolescence, technological change. There's all these downward pressures on our dollars, and yet people are just trying to do the same thing over and over again and try to average rate return themselves out to succeed, and it has to be more tactical and has to be more strategic than that.
And it's interesting when you talk about some of those eroding things. If you can picture pushing a boulder up a mountain, and there are forces that are working against you. Okay, so there's taxes, there's inflation, the things we talked about, and they're working against you. When you get to the top of the mountain and you're ready to distribute your funds to you in retirement, those same forces are no longer working against you, so to speak. They're working in the same direction that the boulder's rolling downhill, and they accelerate the descent of the boulder. And so you've got to manage that both going up and coming down, because if you're still out of control with your taxes on the way down, you're going to run out of money.
Right.
And that's not good.
No, that's bad.
Yep. And that comes back to another position that we stand, is that we believe that the descent is more important than the climb. That's why people are positioning and putting money away for retirement, right? So the question to be raised is why are you putting that money away? Well, the reason why we hear from our clients is so I can spend it in retirement.
Yeah.
Well, then that makes sense then that we build the end now and figure out the distribution strategies in relation to how they're going to spend their assets, because the rules changed 360 degrees. The accumulation rules, when it comes to distribution, the rules change. And people have to understand how to spend their assets in retirement and how to have their minimize taxes and to have the longevity, and it becomes an actuarial calculation for distribution. And very few planners are planning and doing that. They're always focused on the accumulation and rates of return, but with our clients, we're focused on building the end in mind and helping them get down what we call that financial mountain, because that's the whole reason why they're saving for their money in retirement anyways.
So if people want to get a hold of you, John, how can they get a hold of you at Solid Rock Financial?
They can go ahead and give me a phone call at 701-223-1000, and they could ask to talk to Misty. They can also check us out on the web at srfinancial.net.
All right. Well, thanks for being in today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
The views expressed are that of the host and are for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to buy or sell securities. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. Neither GA Reppel & Company nor its affiliates is providing tax or legal advice. Interested parties are strongly encouraged to seek advice from qualified tax and/or legal experts regarding the best options for your particular circumstances.